Becky, welcome to Transitions Unscripted, and these are conversations I have with friends all about life's unexpected twists and turns and how we navigate our way through them. So thank you so much for joining me. It's lovely to see you.
I see you too.
Now, we're going to be talking about your alopecia today, and this is a conversation that you've actually had with my children, but
Yeah.
over all the years that we've known each other, we've never actually spoken about it in any detail. So thank you for wanting to come and do it and to share your story and your experiences. And also, hopefully, give some support to the people listening that might be going through something similar, or they might know of someone who's also suffering from hair loss. So any advice that you can give will no doubt be invaluable. So we're going to go back to the beginning, and unlike all my previous guests where I've had so far on the podcast, their transitions have happened later in life. They're big challenges. But from what I understand from our few conversations leading up to today, yours happened at an incredibly young age. You were really young when you started to lose your hair. So if we can we go back to that time, and could you give a little bit of information about how you were feeling and those initial weeks, months, and first years of your hair loss? And if it's not too painful, can you remember the actual day when you started to lose your hair as well?
Yeah. I can't actually, I couldn't put a date or an age on it because I was so little. But a girl in my class just turned around to me and said, Becky, you've got a bald patch in your hair. And I was like, what? And then there was this whole chaos ensued with the class because everyone was going, oh my goodness, what's going on? And so I went home and I said to my mum, there's a patch in my hair. And then from there, we went to doctor's appointments to see if anyone could say what was wrong, and no one really knew because a child at that age, what could it be? Because alopecia basically it can be caused by stress. And so at 7 or 8 years old, how can you be stressed, really? I had an amazing upbringing. I had a lovely school. I had friends. It wasn't like anything had happened to make it occur. So everyone was stumped. No one knew what happened.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask what the cause is, and did they know straight away that it was alopecia, or did they try and put it down to other factors?
Yeah, so they know what. So basically, what causes it is your immune system attacks your hair follicles, and lots of different things can cause it. But the main one they think is stress. It's all so unknown that you don't really know. So initially, they tested my iron, and they thought I had an iron deficiency, and that was the cause. So I was put on lots of iron tablets, eating everything green, and trying to, get my iron levels up. And then they stabilized, but my hair didn't grow back. So they were like, oh, this is odd.
Were you noticeably losing your hair?
I never noticed it happen. That came like 10 years later when it all fell out. But initially, a few strands of hair every so often, they build up to a patch, but you don't really notice it. So I noticed it when I looked at my hair. I couldn't put my hair up because it would reveal the patches. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm brushing my hair and loads came out initially.
Okay. And so before it started coming out in clumps, how did you manage day to day with friends and going to school and basically being out in public? Were you very self-conscious, or were you at a stage where you were just like, this is it and I'll just get on with it for the time being?
I mean, to begin with, it was awful. Going through your teenage years, primary school was fine, but then going through your teenage years with bald patches in your hair, going to high school, it was not great. People made comments and saying that stories made up of why it happened, and it was hard to cover it up. So I had to style it out. You just have to get on with it. But I don't think I fully became sure of myself with it until I was 18 and it all fell out. I think.
And then what, you then embraced having no hair?
Yeah, and you have to. And also, weirdly, when you have patches, you can't cover it up. But when you have a whole head without your hair, you can put a wig on and it's covered up.
Okay.
So there are a lot of people who still to this day will not know until this that I wear a wig. People are always so shocked because I can cover the whole thing. Whereas when you've got patches, you can't really do that. And it brings all questions from people, and people aren't always at school. People weren't always very good at I think as a teenager, you don't know how to have those discussions.
Completely. Well, there's a few things I want to pick up on that. Definitely. One
Yeah.
is like you've just talked about those teenage years. My gosh, without having to lose your hair, they are so turbulent anyway. Emotions, hormones, relationships, everything is flying around. So to
Mm.
have to navigate hair loss at the same time as just going through what a normal teenager has to go through, I imagine that was really, really challenging, like emotionally very draining, and obviously physically. And with hair, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's such an expression of your identity. People can cut it, they can grow it, they can dye it. It's all about building up your self-esteem. So if you haven't got that tool
Yeah.
to help, play the game, to try the different outfits, to try the different looks,
Yeah.
what were you doing instead? Were you turning to other means of self-expression? Were you playing around with makeup or fashion, or did you keep yourself much more to yourself?
I don't think I've ever kept myself to myself, as you well know. But I was really big into theatre and stuff at school. So I was like, I fought against being conscious and just thought, do you know what? I'm going to do it. And I would always feel quite self-conscious, not about being on stage, but about, gosh, if my hair slips and you can see a patch, or, things like that. But I think I've always been quite resilient, I'd like to think. I think I said to you before, like, you have to sink or swim in these situations. And for me, my life and the lifestyle I have and had as a teenager, I was very, like, I used to work at the rugby club. I was always out and about just doing things with older people mainly, which is why I think I found it easier, because older people always understood more.
Okay. Well, on that note of comments, I think you mentioned a bit ago that reactions can be very different between children and adults. And
Oh, definitely.
you've also touched upon about comments, some of them being difficult conversations or uncomfortable conversations. So I suppose my question is twofold. What is the difference when children talk to you and adults talk to you? And how do you respond to the questions that they're finding awkward to ask, but you
I
might just think, this is me and it can't be awkward?
think the differences are when children do it, it's very innocent. In my job, the children don't turn around, they're not doing it to try and get a negative reaction from me. They're not doing it to make me sad. They're just doing it because they're like, oh, that's different, and we want to know why. Well, I think when adults do it, sometimes it depends. I find it trickier when it's people I don't know. I think when it's people who I know, they know me so well, so they know how to ask the question in a way that will not make me react. But I've had, especially working behind a bar, I've had people make comments, and I think with adults, you just have to be like, just have to like say what it is, and you can't say anything else. With children, I don't go deep into the science of it. I'm just like, well, I'm different, and that's okay. And if you were different, that would be fine too.
And so do you think you still have a vulnerability around the condition, or do you think, as you said, you become more and more resilient, that actually now you don't let it affect you as much?
I think I'm still quite spiky. I think that's a good way of describing it. I'm quite spiky with it. If people make certain comments in a certain way, then I will react. There are people who can make those comments. I have friends. One of my closest friends is a hairdresser, and she, bless her heart, came with me for my first wig. She's incredible, and she will take the mick out of me relentlessly. But she has been there from the beginning. So when she does it, I'm like, that's her, and I think she does it because she knows my limits, and she also knows that we've been through this together. But I think I struggle if people make comments who don't really know me well enough to do it. So yeah, I'm a bit sometimes. I don't think I will ever become fully happy and comfortable with it ever.
Well, that was going to be my next question, Becky. I was going to say, have there been or are there any more recent moments when you feel empowered by it?
I think when I feel empowered by it when, with all the children that I look after, when they will very openly just turn around and say, oh yeah, that's Becky, she has this thing and that's cool. I'm like, this is amazing, because they're so chilled about it. One of my children who I was at her house a few weeks ago, and there was lots of children there, and she just made a comment about Becky being bald, very passively. And all the children said, what? No, she's not bald. And she went, yeah, she's just really bald. And I was like, I love that you just say that so casually, and it means nothing to, she doesn't think it's weird. She doesn't think it's not a very nice thing. She's just like, yeah, that's Becky. And
Exactly. It's you.
yeah,
It's you. And I it's an innocence. It's they you know they haven't been affected by what they've seen on a screen or what they've read. What it's coming from a very, very safe and kind place, isn't it?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that is the beauty of the children. They say it as it is, but it doesn't come with any other meaning.
I think that's when I'm empowered by it. I'm like, these girls, I hope, mainly the girls, will grow up to know that it's okay if anything
Exactly.
like that happens. And I think that's really important, because I didn't have that when I was losing my hair. It was so unknown, and no one could turn around and say to me, don't worry, it will be fine. As much as my parents could try to, and they were amazing, as much as they could try and help, you can't look at someone with a full head of hair and go, well, how, you can't tell me that because you don't know what it's like.
Well, can I talk about your family, if that's
Yeah, of course you
okay? Obviously, we know James, your husband, and I imagine he's been a big support. But I want to just go back to, can we go back to those younger years? And as you just alluded to, your parents. It's every parent's prerogative to protect their child, and if they see their child struggling or upset, it's devastating. So how was your relationship with them when you were going through such a trauma yourself? Were you acutely aware that they were trying to help and they couldn't help?
I didn't notice in the early days because I just don't think it really was as big a thing. But I moved away to university and then had to ring my mum and dad and basically bawl my eyes out and be like, my hair was coming out in clumps that were like this big. And so ringing my mum and dad and crying is firstly a big thing because I'm a very confident and very happy person generally. So I think for them hearing me like that it must have been awful. And I almost feel sorry for them in that sense because I'm so sorry I put that on you. But like you say, they're my parents and they just want the best for me. But they were great. They were so good. They took me to hospital appointments because trying to find out what was wrong. And then essentially it was, do you want a wig or do you not want a wig?
Mhm.
And you have to pay for these things. So, as a student, I couldn't afford them. So my parents were unbelievable. They were like, let's go, we'll get it sorted. I went to the wig shop, and I only know because I've been told by my hairdresser friend that how hard it was for my parents. They've never shown me it.
Really?
So I
Wow.
obviously,
So, sorry,
yeah. And
carry on.
no, sorry. As an adult, I am now well aware. Thinking about the children I look after, if I saw them go through something like this, it would break my heart. So now I'm very aware of how they must have felt. But initially, they didn't show it. They were just stoic and just got on with it.
Isn't it amazing, though, Becky? But at the beginning of that conversation just then, you were trying to protect them, and you were saying how sorry you were about putting them through your own condition, and now you know that they were trying to protect you as well
Yeah,
from their
yeah,
own emotion. So that both sides are acutely aware that it's such a sensitive topic that they're almost trying everyone's trying to put a brave face on
yeah,
to it, isn't
yeah.
it?
And
And
yeah, yeah, basically, yeah.
And is it something that you talk about with your parents now?
I mean, we never, like, my family, historically, we don't do serious
Okay.
chats generally. We talk about it, and they're very proud of the way I've like handled everything. And now I've taken the baton on of paying for all these expensive wigs and all that. But they will help me with things like that if I need it. But yeah, we talk about it, but I'm generally quite jokey because that's the way I prefer to handle it.
Mhm.
When James and I got married, Dad did a speech and he rang me and said, "Look, do you want me to mention it explicitly in my Father of the Bride speech, or do you want me to just skim over it?" And I was like, "Do you know what? Let's just skim over it, but you can, in your own words, put it out." And he just said she's been through a lot, and everyone here has seen her go through that, and look at how she's come out. It's not that we don't talk about it; it's just not a thing to talk about in that sense.
I suppose it's not a defining factor about you, is it? You know, what is so special about you is that it's your personality and the person that you become, and you having alopecia is just a part of that. It doesn't, like we say, define you, which I think is so
No,
important to remember, isn't it? About any condition that someone might has, it doesn't consume all of them. It's just a part of them, isn't it?
exactly. I think sometimes in life you just have to be like, what's important? And actually, the fact that I haven't got any hair, yes, it has its importance, but it's not the main important thing in my life. I have a lot more going on.
I think you've
So
absolutely summed it up exactly. Let's open it up to the beauty industry, because I've been thinking about this, and some would say that the beauty industry as a whole is a lot more inclusive and diverse. And some would say that there is a long way to go to be a lot more inclusive and diverse. So when it comes to the representation of alopecia, what is the narrative out there about that? Because it's something that, because it's not a day-to-day part of my life, I'm not aware of it. So
yeah.
are there role models out there in the public eye talking about it and giving it the platform that it deserves?
So I think a lot's changed in the. I mean, I'm 29 now, so it's been like 22 years of this. So a lot's changed. Obviously, initially, the only person my mum could say was Gail Porter. That was the only person. It was like, oh, Gail Porter, she's out there, and look, she's okay, she's beautiful, and that was amazing. And I've always looked up to her for that, because I'm like, this is cool. And she was my initial first person. But especially since the development of TikTok and things, there's a lot more people I've found on there talking about it. There's not necessarily people who I would say are famous, but there's a lot of TikTok creators who have alopecia who will do makeup tutorials, wig tutorials. Generally, I would say in the makeup, from what I've found anyway, there isn't much guidance on what to do. I don't have eyebrows. So when I was trying to draw on my eyebrows, there's not much you can really find unless you dig really, really deep to help you with things like that. And things like eyelashes, I don't have eyelashes. I don't have anything, so I have to stick eyelashes on. But they're £5 a pop, so there's not. And I'm not saying we should get freebies, but no one takes it into consideration that I have to wear them every day. So that is a lot of £5. I use them more than once, but it's a lot of money.
it
So I
all
just think,
it all begins to add up, doesn't it? The thing, and
yeah.
whilst you're just talking about the finance, like, can we talk about your wig as well? Because you mentioned that obviously it's expensive. So if you don't mind me asking, how much is a day-to-day wig that you might wear?
So this wig is just under £3,000.
Is
So
it really?
yeah,
Wow.
so the thing with this wig is, so essentially when I first started wearing wigs, I was wearing synthetic wigs, which would melt if you got too close to heat, which is not ideal. But I think then I was a bit in denial. I was like, no, my hair's going to grow back. I don't need to spend all this money. It'll be fine. And then after a while, I thought, this is no, you need to be serious here. And so there's a company that are called Freedom Wigs, and they make them in New Zealand. It's all real hair, and it's got a silicone cap which only fits my head, so no one else could have it. So I've had my head, basically they stuck dots all over my head, took a
Wow.
scan of it and printed it out. James found it fascinating. He loved it. So the rep I have with that company is absolutely phenomenal. She's great, and she actually has alopecia herself. So for me, that puts me at ease, because when I initially went for a consultation, she just took her hair off and was like,
And
you know,
she knows exactly what you're going through and what you've been through.
and that's a big thing. I struggled going into just a normal wig shop, because these girls that were helping me choose them had their own hair, and they don't
Yeah.
understand. I'm not to say that they don't understand how hard it is, but I think unless you've had this happen or anything like this, you will never be able to know how it feels. But like Nikki, my hair rep, is wonderful, and she just gets it, and she gets that it's hard and it's a tricky conversation to have. And even things like choosing what hair to have is really hard, because I lost that identity a long time ago when my hair fell out. So then I've had to rebuild myself, and I look so different from when I had hair. It's unbelievable.
What color was your natural hair?
It was like this, but it was
Okay.
very thin, very short. My main thing, I think the main thing that's changed me is my eyebrows,
Okay.
because I had quite big eyebrows, and that it changes your face, and you don't really think about it. But now I have them tattooed on, I can choose the shape. So
Just switching it over, you have, and forgive me if this is an insensitive thing to say, but the freedom to change how you look as often as you like. I know obviously if you tattoo your eyebrows on, then it's, you know, it's not as regularly, but
yeah.
in terms of color of hair, in terms of length of hair, in terms of style, have you played around with that? Have you tried blonde wigs and black wigs and long wigs and short wigs, all the variety?
Yeah, so initially when I picked my first wig, the way we calmed the scenario down to make it a bit more fun was just trying on stupid colours. So obviously I've got really dark brown eyes, so putting blonde hair on me is not a good look. So I've done blonde, and I've had a fringe a few times. I've had a long, I've had quite short, I've gone dark, I've gone quite light. But that was when they were cheaper. Now, because these are a lot more expensive.
And so can you still wear those wigs, or are those the synthetic wigs that you don't wear anymore?
I wouldn't wear the synthetic ones because they were a lace cap, and they're so uncomfortable. I can't tell
Yeah,
you how uncomfortable they were. And
yeah.
they didn't fit properly because they couldn't have a lace cap for everyone's head. So they'd sag at the back, and they were just, they were a means to an end, I think, rather than a final thing.
What's the biggest challenge with wearing a wig, do you think?
These wigs, what is the biggest challenge?
Or maybe there isn't. Maybe you enjoy it and it's the ease.
Yeah, I really do enjoy it. And actually, James and I have this conversation quite regularly, like, what would I do if my hair grew back? Because I wouldn't be able to just take, this hasn't been styled for about 2 weeks. I've just left it on a wig stand.
You don't get
And
bedhead.
and so when Nikita, my lovely hairdresser friend, styles my hair for a wedding or a party, I can keep that in for days on end. So
That's amazing.
yeah, there are far more positives than there are negatives, I would say. One thing actually, my friend Rose noticed the other day was I get really bad rashes sometimes because having something on your head all day, especially I've noticed in this cold weather, really it does irritate it. Nothing's perfect. You just can't have a wig that's going to suit everyone and make everyone's head fine. I do get that. I would say that is the only thing. And obviously the fact that when the bits of hair come out, as it does, because it's not final, that's annoying because it starts getting thinner. But really, the fact I sometimes get a dry head and the fact that it falls out and it obviously won't grow back, they're the only negatives, I'd say.
Well, that's fabulous, isn't it? Particularly when something costs so much. And like you say, to go
Yeah.
through the whole process of making sure that it fits you personally as well. You can't have something that you don't enjoy wearing. So
No.
that's a delight to know that when you walk out of the door that you feel put together, which is fabulous. When it comes to other people, are there things that you wish people would understand better about alopecia?
There's three things. It's trauma-based, it's stress-based, but also there's other illnesses that can cause hair loss and treatments that can cause hair loss. So people quite often, if I don't have my wig on, would mistake that for me being ill.
Yeah.
And so I struggle with that quite a lot because I'm like, no, I'm not ill, I'm fine, please don't feel sorry for me, I'm okay. So
Yeah.
I think people automatically go, oh, well, what happened to make your hair fall out? And I'm like, well, nothing. I think a lot of people expect that I've had this horrendous childhood or I've had something awful happen to me. Because I have heard stories of people who've been in car crashes, for example, and then had PTSD, and that can quite often cause it. There is a definite link between that. Whereas with me, like, I can't tell you what caused it. I have no idea. And I think for me, when people are like, oh, but you must have had something awful happen, I'm like, not really. I've been incredibly lucky. I've had a wonderful upbringing, wonderful friends. I have a great job. There's
It
nothing.
is what it is, isn't it? So if you lost your hair and didn't know the cause of it, is there the potential that it could grow back? What does the future look like in terms of hair growth?
They don't know. I think I had about 3 or 4 different treatments to try and get this to grow back. I took steroid tablets initially. That was my first one. And then the really horrible one was I would have neat steroid injected into my scalp. So they would put, yeah.
That just
That was when
sounds
I
incredibly
thought,
painful.
Oh, horrendous. That was when I had patches. So they would basically inject the patch site with steroid in the hopes that it would make the follicles,
Stimulate the
yeah,
growth.
basically kickstart the growth. And then when I lost all my hair, the I would say the worst treatment I had, mainly because I had to do it every week, was I would have neat steroid of different like varying levels of potency rubbed on my head. And the thought behind that was, I don't want to get this scientifically wrong, but I think as far as I understand it, the thought behind that was it would make my head quite sore, so it would stimulate the follicles. So I would have it was
Almost to protect your hair, your scalp then. Oh
yeah, it
my
was
God.
really, I mean, and it's wonderful. If it works for people, then that's absolutely incredible. It did not work for me. And for me, the reason I found it particularly hard was I would have to go every week to the hospital, which is disruptive in itself.
Mm.
But I was doing my teaching degree at that point. So I'd have to drive all the way to York Hospital every Monday morning at 6 o'clock, have this treatment, and be told, oh, it's not worked.
Mm.
To then go straight back to school into the classroom to teach a class of children with my head really sore. I remember just saying to my mum, this isn't working for me. It wasn't worth it. And I think the vicious cycle of going around and going, it's not working, was making me, that probably was causing me stress, ironically.
Yeah.
The treatment was more worse than the problem at that point for me. So
Absolutely, and yeah, the mental stress of it, and like you say, you're building yourself up, and then you're coming crashing back down again, and knowing that without your hair, you could still have a wonderful and happy life. It wasn't worth
I
the
think
upset of it.
I think that's it. It wasn't worth it. And at the end of the day, I'm sure some people out there would probably persevere, but I just thought, you know what, I can cover my head up, I can tattoo my eyebrows on, I can stick my lashes on, and I can just go out there and be fine with it.
Yeah.
And I think growing up, the way I was brought up was very much in a like in the rip and ruff of environment with all the men and all the wives who were really helped bring me up and were part of my life. So
Mm.
like no one ever made me feel like I was weird or
No.
different. It was just it. And I think my mum and dad were amazing in that they put me out there to this world of all these different people. So I saw so many different walks of life,
Yeah.
so many different ages, and everyone accepted it and got on with it. And I was like, what's the point? I mean, who am I doing this for, really? At the end of the day, who am I doing this for? Because all the people, my family, my friends, external people, other
Yeah.
people, no one cares. And so why am I putting myself through this?
So what would you say then if someone is maybe in that stage of treatment or thinking about treatment for their
Yeah.
alopecia? Is there any advice that you could share with that, having gone through the process and it hadn't come out how you were expecting it to?
I think it's really interesting. I think the big thing is not to expect too much, because I think I was built up to expect this magical thing that was going to cure everything. And I
Yeah.
think for me, if someone had just said to me, this might not work, you've got to get your head around that, I'd have been a bit
And
like,
no
okay.
one said that to you at any stage?
I don't, if they did, I don't remember it.
Yeah.
And,
Kind of
but also,
blinkered by it.
yeah, well, and I think I've said this to you in the past that, like, actually, it's not that I've blocked it out because it's traumatic, but I think a lot of it I've just gone back of the mind, whatever. And no one wants to lower your expectations and make you think it's not going to work. But equally,
Yeah.
I think it's important to know that if it doesn't work, it is okay. And I think that's the main thing. Like,
Yeah.
I would say go for it. And there's new treatments coming out now that could help. And I could go
Mm-hmm.
and try those if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who are probably in far worse situations than me. And if you're not the type of person that I am, that I'm very out there, you might struggle, and having those treatments might be the thing that you want to do. And if you persevere, it might work, and it might have worked for me. But I just made that decision to just go, no, this is not the one. But I do think everyone should try everything first before giving up. In everything, we should all try before we give up on
Well, I think
something.
that's a great life motto, isn't it? Generally.
Yeah, yeah,
I've got a couple more questions left, if that's all right, Becky. And
yeah.
I wanted to ask about, the person that you become and the life that you lived. You've alluded to it. You're happy. You've got a very successful career. You're very positive and passionate. What would you say to your younger self, that 7, 8-year-old girl, if you could go back in time and say, you're going to have this alopecia. potentially for the rest of your life, what would you say to her?
I think, you know what, I would just say it's all going to be fine, and you've just got to power
Yeah.
through. And also, I think the big thing, don't ever change, because it could change you. And I think a lot of the time I felt like I should sort of shrink away a little bit and not be so confident. But do you know what? I've blazed my trail, and I've carried on. And I think that would be it. Just be confident and not stress and worry, because there's no point. Like everything works out in the end at the end of the day, and
And
that's
you could
that.
say that alopecia hasn't stopped you from doing from
No,
what you want to do.
no, I think there have been a few moments where, you know, like things like dating and stuff was hard, but then I mean, you've met my lovely husband, you know, like I've met James and it fitted, and we work, and he does not care. All my friends don't care. I'm really happy, and I think to have known at that young age that it would be fine, and I'd have a
Yeah.
really good life and a lovely husband and all the amazing things I have. Yeah, it would have been nice to have been told it would be fine. I think that's the main thing, you know.
Oh, that reassurance, isn't it?
Yeah,
That warm hug to say everything's going to be okay.
exactly.
And then finally, I want to know if you could sum up your relationship with alopecia in a word or a phrase. Do you know what that would be?
Probably a roller coaster, I think I'd say.
I think that is
Yeah.
fair to say. That's life in general, isn't it? But I think
Yeah.
that is fair to say. Absolutely, that it's
Yeah.
got the ups and downs.
It's had its moments where it's been tough, and you know, some days when I'm feeling particularly sensitive, I'll look in the mirror when I've not got my hair on and no eyelashes
Yeah.
and think, oh God. But you know, generally, it's you take your peaks and troughs, don't you? You just have to get on with it,
Yeah.
and yeah, roller coaster, definitely.
And I think the important thing is, Becky, is that it hasn't defined you, which I think is so important, isn't it? And I think that's such a magical message to put out there, that it hasn't changed anything about who you are or what you want to be or where you want to go. And I think that is
Yeah.
incredibly special. Um, and actually, on that note, I was talking to my children about talking to you, and they both that they adore you, so both their faces lit up. And my son went on to say, he goes, oh, that is so cool. And then
Oh,
and then there was a slight pause, and he went on to say, Becky's hair loss makes her extra special. And I was like, that's absolutely right. It's like alopecia is like her superpower,
oh,
which
bless him. That's very sweet.
it really is. And so they think you're wonderful, and I think the person that you are, being, like I said, positive and passionate and strong, you know, it's all about being
Yeah.
strong and going out there and getting what you want. I think that is a testament to what you've been through, and anything coming forward, I imagine, will pale into significance to
Yeah.
what you've what you've been able to go through already. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for trusting me and talking to me, because I know you were slightly nervous about it, and it's not something that is a daily conversation that you have with anyone. So thank you for agreeing to chat to me and sharing your experiences, and hopefully giving those people listening who might have some connection with alopecia, whether that's through someone they know or whether it's they're going through it themselves, it gives them that confidence that everything is going to be more than okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot, and there's things out there.
Yeah, and I think also it's, you know, it's that whole thing of pull from the people who support you and who are in your life, you know,
Mm,
and also just be you, because at the end of the day you're enough, and that's all that matters. So you know, and I'm very very lucky to have the support network I have. I think that's, you know, you're part of it, your children are part of it, and it's one of the things I'm very lucky to have. So
well, we're lucky
yeah.
too.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I will be seeing you very soon, because you're coming to babysit. So me and my husband can escape for a few hours, which would be lovely. But thank you for today, and take care.
Well, no, thank you so much.